The first thing I noticed was the light. Our bedroom curtains were usually drawn in the afternoons, but today, sunlight was spilling through the window, cutting sharp golden lines across the carpet. It made the shadows deeper, and the scene in front of me painfully clear. She was there, tangled in the sheets we'd picked out together at Target last spring. Sheets I'd saved up for because she'd said she wanted something soft and luxurious. The same sheets we'd fallen asleep on after binge-watching Netflix, after sharing secrets and promises. But today, her head wasn't resting on my chest. It was on his shoulder. Chris. My roommate. My friend. My so-called brother. My girlfriend's head was resting on his chest. Her hair was messy in that way I used to love, but now it just screamed of someone else's hands. Her lips were parted, still flushed from whatever they'd been doing before I walked in. And Chris? He had the nerve to look more annoyed than ashamed, like I'd interrupted a private moment that didn't concern me. For a second, the world went muffled. My heartbeat was the only sound in my ears. My grip tightened on my guitar case until my knuckles burned. The bag of Chinese takeout swung limply at my side, the smell of sweet and sour chicken suddenly nauseating. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Liam," she started, her voice high and panicked. Chris sat up, running a hand through his hair. "Man, it's not what it looks like." I cut him off with a cold, bitter laugh. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said. The silence that followed was suffocating. I didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. Didn't ask why. I just stood there with betrayal burning in my chest. I made a silent promise. They were going to pay for this. My name is Liam Carter. I'm 28 years old, born and raised in a small town in Ohio, but I came to the city chasing music. I wanted to write songs that could crack hearts open the way mine had been cracked by the ones I loved. Music doesn't pay bills, at least not at first, so I worked side gigs. Bartending, teaching guitar to kids whose parents thought it'd be cute, and delivering food at night. That's how I met Chris. Chris was one of those guys you instantly get along with. Quick jokes, easy smile, the type who never seemed to take life too seriously. We met at an open mic night, bonded over beer and bad covers of 90s hits, and a week later, we decided to combine rent and get an apartment together. We were both struggling to get by, and Chris seemed trustworthy. Or so I thought. I met Emily about 6 months later. She was magnetic. Not just beautiful, though she was that, with eyes that seemed to change color depending on the light, but she had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. She was studying marketing and working part-time, and we clicked instantly. I asked her to move in with me, a few months after we met, when she had accommodation issues. When my gigs didn't bring in enough, I picked up extra shifts to keep our place running. Chris knew I was covering more than my share some months. Sometimes, he'd plead with me to help because he was always short on cash, other times, he'd just keep quiet. Emily chipped in what she could sometimes, other times she'd just kiss my cheek and say, "I'll make it up to you one day." I didn't mind. I thought we were building a future. We even started having Friday dinners together, just the three of us. At the time, it felt like family. Looking back, maybe it was just a rehearsal for the lies they'd perfect later. I was always busy writing and recording music. Attending music fairs and looking for how to push up my career. I didn't see the signs. Or maybe I did and chose to ignore them. The way Emily's laughter with Chris seemed just a little too private. The times Chris would conveniently forget to mention plans with her when I wasn't home. I told myself I was paranoid. That they were just friends. I kept working, kept paying, kept believing. Right up until the day I came home early. After I saw them in my bed, I didn't scream. I didn't throw punches. I didn't even demand answers. Instead, I stood there, letting the silence burn them alive. Emily scrambled for words first. She glanced at Chris, hoping he'd rescue her from the lie she couldn't even finish. Chris sat there like a deer in headlights, his mouth half open, then closing again. Man, it's not what it looks like. We didn't mean. I held up my hand. My voice was calm. Too calm. You don't get to make this easier for yourselves. Emily's face crumpled. Chris rubbed the back of his neck, pretending to be ashamed. I could see it already, the way they were preparing for me to explode so they could paint me as the crazy one. But I didn't give them that. I just said, finish whatever you were doing. I'm going for a walk. And then I left. The cold night air hit my face like a slap, but it cleared my head. By the time I'd walked 3 blocks, I knew exactly what I was going to do. They thought I needed them. They thought I was scraping by, barely making rent. That was their leverage, the idea that I couldn't afford to lose the apartment, that I was too broke to start over alone. So I let them believe that. What they didn't know was that the week before, I had gotten an email that could change everything. A music label had finally offered me a deal. Nothing huge, but enough to cover months of rent and set me up in my own place. All I had to do was sign. I had wanted to tell them, but I didn't want to make a hasty decision. They'd have pushed me to sign the deal without thinking about it thoroughly. I decided I wouldn't tell them. Not yet. Instead, I'd play the broke roommate, the struggling boyfriend. I'd keep covering their share when they forgot, keep acting like I was holding it together with duct tape and hope. And when the time was right, I'd strike. They always said I was too easygoing, so I would just play that along. After walking for about an hour, I went back to the apartment. Back to their guilty eyes. Back to the game I'd already started playing. For the next few weeks, I played my role like it was the only part I'd ever been born to perform. I had stopped sleeping in the same room with Emily. I'd decided to take the couch at night. In the mornings, I'd shuffle around the apartment in old sweatpants, nursing a cup of cheap instant coffee. I made sure to sigh just loud enough for them to hear. When Chris would ask, "Everything okay, man?" I'd give a weak smile and say, "Yeah, just trying to figure things out." Emily stopped making eye contact with me completely. She was always heading out to meet a friend or staying late at work. I didn't care. Let her think she was getting away with it. Some nights, I'd even cook. Pasta, stir-fry, whatever I could throw together from the discount aisle. Chris would eat like he had no shame, while Emily picked at her food, probably wondering why I hadn't brought up the issue again. That was the beauty of it, the more normal I acted, the more it messed with their heads. Meanwhile, every spare moment I had went into my music. I'd stay up until 3 a.m., headphones on, refining the demo tracks the label wanted. They thought I was wasting time on a hobby, but every song I recorded brought me closer to my payday. I even let Chris borrow money. When Chris said he was a little short on his half of the rent, I gave him some cash and told him to pay me back when he can. It wasn't kindness. It was the rope I was letting them hang themselves with. The deal with the label was moving fast. I had signed the deal. My first advance was sitting in an account. All I had to do was decide when to drop the curtain. And I wanted that moment to hurt. But I noticed the cracks. It started small. Little things they didn't think I noticed. Chris stopped whistling in the mornings. That was his thing. He'd always walk around in his boxers, coffee in hand, acting like the king of the apartment. But now, it is just silence. Emily started locking her phone screen every time I walked into the room. Not just face down, actually locking it, like a teenager hiding texts from her parents. They didn't know I saw the tension between them. They'd sit on opposite ends of the couch, scrolling separately, barely speaking. I wondered if the thrill of sneaking around had worn off now that they thought they were together. Meanwhile, I kept giving them exactly what they needed to stay comfortable, and exactly what would make their fall hurt the most. I told Chris I was thinking of giving up the apartment. Money's tight, I sighed. I might just move back in with my folks for a while. I could see it in his eyes, panic. He liked this place. He liked me paying most of the rent when he was short. Emily pretended not to care, but I caught her glancing at Chris, as if silently asking, what happens if he actually leaves? The truth is that I had already gotten a new apartment. But instead of moving out immediately, I stayed, just to watch them squirm. I started quietly packing some of my things into my new place. Every trip out the door with a box made them more uneasy. The best part is that they still had no idea the storm that was coming. By the first week of the next month, my plan was airtight. The real fun came with the lease. I'd been the primary tenant since day one, with Chris listed as an occupant, not a cosigner. Legally, when I left, he'd be responsible for the rent if the landlord agreed to keep him. And if he couldn't afford it, he would face eviction. I stopped paying my half of the rent last month, telling Chris, "Man, I just can't do it this month. Things are rough." He laughed nervously, probably thinking, finally, we're even. I had let him believe it. Emily had started cooking more, cheap meals, pasta with barely any sauce, eggs and toast for dinner. She tried to mask it as eating healthy, but I knew they were stretching what little cash they had. 2 weeks before I planned to vanish, I told Chris I was heading out to crash at a friend's for a few days, to clear my head. In reality, I had moved the last of my important things out of the apartment and handed my landlord a signed notice of vacating. That same day, I slipped a fat envelope under the apartment door, addressed to both of them. Inside was a letter from the landlord stating they had 30 days to pay the full rent or vacate, plus the eviction notice already drafted if they failed. I pictured them opening it together, Emily's face draining of color, Chris's forehead beading with sweat. But I didn't stick around to see it. The real satisfaction would come from disappearing without a word, and letting them feel the walls close in. The morning after I left, the sunlight coming through the window of my new apartment. Everything felt different. Quieter. Cleaner. No trace of the heaviness that used to sit on my chest every morning in that apartment. I had bought a new phone, and my old phone, the one Chris and Emily still thought they could reach me on, was propped up on my nightstand. I'd kept it powered on just to watch their desperation build. The first call came at 8:13 a.m. It was Chris. Then another at 8:16. By 8:20, Emily was calling. By 9 o'clock, I'd racked up 12 missed calls and 5 frantic texts. "Chris, bro, where are you? This isn't funny. Emily, why would you do this without saying anything? Chris, rent's due today. The landlord saying you signed the lease. Emily, call me now. Please. Chris, if we get kicked out, it's on you." I didn't reply. Not once. Instead, I muted the phone, grabbed my coffee. By noon, the tone of their messages shifted. Less panic, more blame. Chris, this is low, man. After everything we've been through. Emily, so you just walk out and leave us like this? You're heartless. I almost laughed. Heartless? No, it was calculated. They had each other, wasn't that the whole point? Over the next few days, I heard from a mutual friend who was our neighbor that things got ugly fast. Chris was begging people for money. Emily tried selling some of my old things, not realizing I'd already taken anything worth a dime. The couch, the TV stand, even Chris's beloved gaming console, all listed online for quick cash. Meanwhile, I was across the city, in a soundproof booth, recording my first official single. Every lyric I sang felt like a final nail in the coffin of our so-called friendship and relationship. On the 5th day, I sent them one thing, a postcard. No name. No return address. Just a picture of a golden beach sunset and 4 words in black marker, hope it was worth it. That night, I turned off the old phone for good.